Hi guys, I said I was going to do a video on anxiety in the horse world and dealing with mental illness in general in the horse world and what it's like. So I'm going to mainly talk about anxiety because that's what I mostly experience along with some depression. But I haven't really dealt with any other mental illnesses, so I don't really want to touch on anything that I haven't personally dealt with because I don't want to give the wrong idea to people or just basically talk out of my ass without knowing what I'm saying. So, for people who don't have anxiety, if you like see someone with anxiety, sometimes it's frustrating dealing with them because um, they'll be like constantly needing reassurance and it can be a bit annoying, or they'll see things that aren't there, and then you'll feel like they're accusing you of doing things or saying things that you aren't actually doing. And I just want to kind of explain like why people do that and what it's actually like, and like what people with anxiety's general first thoughts might be when something happens, and how they differ from someone who doesn't have anxiety. So here we go. Okay, so for the most part, I'm pretty good with dealing with like horse shows and being able to show without getting severe anxiety before the show. But dealing with anxiety in the horse world for me is like things like if I see someone watching me ride, my first thought instead of being like, oh, they're watching me ride is like, oh, they're judging me. And I'll like watch facial expressions. And if they're just looking in concentration or whatever, I'll think that they're being like, oh, she sucks. She's doing this. She's doing that. Oh my God. I see something wrong. That horse looks lame, blah, blah, blah. And that's my first thought. Like, that's the first thing that comes in my head. Even if it's my mom, that's how I feel when I see people looking at me riding intently or with certain looks on their faces. And if they're laughing, I assume they're laughing at me automatically. It's not like their friend told them a joke, it's that they're laughing at me. So that's how people with anxiety might feel when they see you watching them ride. And if they stop riding or start acting different, that's why. And try to like think about how that would feel if that was your first thought every time. And then another thing with anxiety in the horse world is, especially with social media, when you share a photo or something on a Facebook group, on Instagram, on Tumblr, etc., and people start complimenting you, my first thought is, are they being sarcastic? Should I accept this compliment, or will I look stupid accepting it because they're actually being sarcastic? And I have to kind of debate with myself about whether or not I should take it seriously or not, and it makes it really hard to accept compliments for that reason, because I'm constantly thinking that there's an ulterior motive and that they're trying to do something unkind, and it really sucks. So whenever I share something, it's always like a kind of an internal struggle when I do get compliments, trying to decipher whether or not they're sincere or not. And it does cause me quite a bit of stress. Okay, and another thing that causes anxiety in the horse world is when you make friends on social media, or you see people you know from social media at shows and they're nice to you. Sometimes I'll have someone being nice to me, and then I'll wonder, like, oh, are they talking about me behind my back? Do they actually hate me? Is this all fake? And like everyone's playing a joke on me. And that causes strain because you can't really ask people that without them getting offended. But then it's just like kind of always in the back of my mind, feeling like people are kind of out to get me because the horse world can be such a hostile place. So basically, like, if you have a friend that you know has anxiety, just try to reassure them and like give them praise, but like be sincere. Like, if you don't mean it, don't say it, and be honest with them. If something's going on, don't be passive aggressive, because they'll probably imagine the absolute worst case scenario. And since the horse world is so competitive and it is elitist in nature because it's an expensive sport, there's the stress of like trying to fit in and like follow trends and not do what people don't necessarily agree with, or what doesn't fit the status quo when it comes to fashion. I'm not talking about training even, it's just like completely superficial stuff. So that can cause a lot of anxiety for people who don't necessarily have the money to fit in and to spend what they need to fit in. And it'll cause stress because they'll feel like because of that, people don't take them as seriously, or that they're not going to be as liked on their social media accounts. So I think it's always important for us to remember that, like, regardless of what brands you wear, we're all still riders, and what you wear doesn't define you. And I always have to remind myself of that. Like, I've started getting nicer stuff recently, but I did not used to have like all the brand names or wear what was in style, and that was okay. But like, I'm sure people probably judged me for that, and it it did cause me anxiety thinking about what other people would think of me wearing when I go somewhere. So I've been trying really hard to teach myself that regardless of what I'm wearing, I shouldn't really care what people think of me, because if they're judging me for what I'm wearing, if it's safe to ride in and everything, then they have no place judging me. And if they're judging me, then it looks bad on them and not on me. So that's what I do to remind myself not to get anxious about what I'm wearing or how I look. Like putting on makeup and stuff, it's like if they're judging me for something so superficial when I'm just there to ride, then that's on them for being superficial, not for me. We also have issues, like I've never personally experienced this, but I know a lot of people who have anxiety, and they'll get a trainer that doesn't know how to train someone with anxiety, and it'll cause them a lot of stress, and it'll actually sometimes make people give up riding. So this is just an important reminder to people with anxiety and to people who are aspiring to be trainers, that part of being a trainer is knowing how to teach different types of riders and how to appeal to different types of people. And if you can't do that, you're kind of missing out on what it's like to be a trainer. Like you should be able to adjust your training style to suit other people. And if you're with a trainer who can't do that and it's making you uncomfortable and it's making you feel bad after every lesson, then you really should reevaluate whether or not you should be with that trainer, because you don't need to get pushed to your breaking point every lesson in order to improve. And your trainer shouldn't be undermining you and cutting you down every lesson. So if they're doing that and it's causing you stress and anxiety, that's a toxic relationship, and that's something you need to get out of. And as a trainer, that's something you should avoid. So if you're aspiring to be a trainer, that's always something to keep in mind, that teaching skills are just important as general horse knowledge and riding skills. So being a good teacher is knowing what your student needs and adjusting it to be like what the particular student needs. You can't do like a concrete training style that you put on all different types of students, because it won't work, and it'll end up sending people away or making them want to quit because your style will not suit them, or it just won't get through to them. Okay, and back to horse show anxiety. I know a lot of people experience anxiety at horse shows, especially when they're first starting out, and that's completely normal. It's something that happens to a lot of people, and if you want to show, it's not something you should let deter you from showing. So with dealing with that type of anxiety, my recommendation is just don't take it seriously, especially for your first few shows. You're there to learn and you're there to get experience. So even if you don't place in anything, even if your horse bucks you off or something, you're still learning and you'll learn from those experiences. And if you don't win, there's nothing wrong with that. It's your first show, you're still gaining experience. And just go there to have fun, treat it like a schooling ride, and just enjoy yourself and stay calm. Drink lots of water. Try and get some downtime between classes. Give yourself lots of time so you don't feel rushed and thereby increase your own stress. Get there early. Make sure your horse is lunged if you need to lunge them before. Get dressed, get them all tagged. Walk them around in hand before your class, but have them ready so that you can just hop on and warm up in case classes get canceled, and speed it up. Really go over things with your trainer before going and make sure you know exactly what you're doing so that you don't get a last minute feeling of doubt or something before you go in and then panic. And just remember that if you do make mistakes, it's all part of the learning process, and it doesn't make you a worse rider, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to learn or be better at shows in the future. So basically, with just dealing with anxiety in general, I think it's important to remind ourselves that if you don't know or personally care about someone, you shouldn't really care about their opinion, and that if they're being superficial and petty, it reflects worse on them than it does on you. So just let them do that if they are, but they probably aren't. So remind yourself that you're probably over evaluating every situation. And even worst case scenario, if it is the worst case scenario, they look petty for thinking mean things about you that have no relation to who you are as a person. So some tips for dealing with anxiety in general are, if you feel like you're about to have a panic attack, try to connect yourself to the environment around you by appealing to the five senses and figuring out what you can, like, what you see, what you hear, what you taste, what you can feel, what you can smell, and connect yourself to the environment and focus on like the small things. Like if you're sitting on a blanket, think about touching the blanket or listening to music or something. Or if you're at the barn smelling hay, and try to relax yourself based on that. And also for new situations where you might be anxious, um, think of the worst case scenario and the best case scenario that can happen. And the worst case scenario is probably what's not going to happen, because you're going to have something absolutely ridiculous that will happen. And then figure out in between those two what is most likely to happen and how you're going to deal with that if that happens. So, first show, worst case scenario, you fall off and you can't go in any of your other classes, which sucks, but it's really not the end of the world. Best case scenario, you win all your classes, you win champion. What's likely to happen is that you go in your classes, you get stuff done, you might not place, but you'll make it through the show without too many issues. And even the worst case scenario for that isn't that big of a deal, and that should help calm you down, because if you have 3 scenarios, there's like a 1 in 3 chance that the worst case scenario happens if it was actually a likely worst case scenario. But with anxiety, it's probably not going to be. So your worst case scenario is something you've conjured in your head, and it's probably not going to happen. And yeah, just really try and relax with your situations, because if you're always thinking about the worst case scenario, you're not going to be focused, and it's going to exacerbate the issue and make you not be able to do as well with dealing with day to day. I'm going to touch briefly on dealing with depression, and if you have any friends that are struggling with it. Basically, all I can say that along with anxiety, these are both real health issues, and they're invisible in that you can't really tell usually by looking at someone whether or not they have it. You have to see them and start noticing patterns and whatnot, and sometimes you can't even tell ever. So they're invisible in that you can't see that someone's sick just by looking at them like you could if someone had like chicken pox or something. But they're real issues. There's long-term health issues that both can bring on that are physical issues. So it's important to remember that these can damage someone's physical health, so you should take it seriously. So with depression, if your friend is depressed, just be there for them. Don't try to be like, oh, people have it worse than you. No one wants to hear that. We all know someone has it worse than us out there. But if someone wants to rant to you, just be there for them. And if they're struggling, be there for them, talk to them, ask them what you can do for them. And if they're really, really struggling and you think they might do something to harm themselves, then at that point it's probably time for you to seek help from like a parent, an instructor, a doctor, or something. And another important thing to remember is that if you have mental health issues, it's not embarrassing or weird to go on medication if you need it. So don't be scared to go to the doctor and seek help. Don't be scared to go to a counselor or see like a psychiatrist or something. Don't be scared to do that if it'll help you. You wouldn't be scared to go to the hospital for a broken arm, so it should be no different with any mental health issue. And one thing I notice a lot in the horse world, I got new glasses, so I'm playing with them, but one thing I notice a lot in the horse world is people shame each other for not going to see their horses, which, like, to an extent, I can understand if you know someone has no personal issues and they got their parents to buy them a horse or something and then they just lost interest and never go see the horse. I can understand being annoyed with something in that situation, but a lot of times when people stop going to the barn, it's due to like a health issue, mental or physical. And if you're dealing with depression, it can be absolutely debilitating to the point where getting out of bed is a chore, let alone driving to the barn and going to ride your horse, even though you may enjoy it once you get there. Depression also can take the joy out of things that you used to enjoy, so people can stop enjoying riding because it just takes too much out of them, and they could want to keep their horse around for when they beat depression and can go back up to the barn. So try to be understanding of people you may not know, and don't assume what their issues may be or why they're not going to the barn. Don't automatically assume, oh, it's because they're spoiled and they don't want to go to the barn. Like, everyone has their personal battles, and I think it's important to remember that and to be considerate of that. And that's another reason why you shouldn't overly critique or bully people online, especially if the critique is unwanted, because if people have anxiety, like, that adds to it. And if you're bullying someone who already has depression, that could be the last straw for them. And I don't think any sane person who has a good heart would want to be the cause of someone's death if they push them to the brink of it when they already have depression. So I think that's just important to remember, and just to be considerate and understanding of people, because you only get to see something really, really vague from looking at them on social media or just seeing them from day to day and only being an acquaintance. Even as friends, your friends will hide stuff from you. So it's just important to be considerate. Well, I think that's all I can say for today. I feel like this video is getting kind of long and getting dragged on a bit, and it's probably not all that interesting, but let me know in the comments below, and you can be honest, because I feel like a lot of the videos of just me talking people don't like, and that I probably don't do them exciting or any, like, not that this one could be exciting because it's serious, but I just feel like I don't do them very well in comparison to other YouTubers, but people wanted me to do this one, so I'm trying my best, and I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. I'll put my links down below, and don't be afraid to ask me questions or talk. I'm a pretty open book, especially when it comes to this type of thing, so yeah, if you ever need someone to talk to and you're having a hard time, don't hesitate. So thank you for watching.